gathering.
Yeah, here.
What place is this?
Okay, I think they're still coming off the bus. I'm showing. So, I'm going to get out here and then I'll show you guys. All right. Now, you thought I could talk fast up until this point. Get ready. I got 15 minutes to go through my whole thing, so then because we got to get to the olive store. My wife's like, you got 15 minutes, that's it. Okay, here we go. You ready? This is Israel this side, Syria that side. See the white road coming down over the hill?
Mm-hmm.
See the white road going right up there?
Yeah.
That side is Syria, this side's Israel. This is the United Nations on the side of the building, UN? Big blue UN down there?
Yeah.
That's the United Nations encampment, the peacekeeping forces up here between Israel and Syria in the Golan Heights region.
Huh.
Now, a couple things. The United Nations world government. We'll talk to you about that in just a second. When we came here in '99, Damascus is about 40 miles that way. The sixth trumpet war, okay? The Bible says the sixth trumpet, the sixth vial of the wrath of God, or the Battle of Armageddon. The Bible says that the great river Euphrates will be dried up to make way for the kings of the east to come down to Israel to battle. If you go straight up past Damascus, 40 miles, there is one main road that goes from Damascus up to the great river Euphrates. In '99, we were on the main road. We were on a 2-lane road, and we went 30 minutes and never saw one car. My father-in-law said, well, man, you know, what's the deal with the guide that we had? He said, well, this is the main road to the great river Euphrates, and he said not many people travel this road. Or, you know, if somebody's coming in from Turkey up in there, that region, they'll come down through here, but he said not many people travel this road. My father-in-law said, whoa, stop the presses. I hit the brakes. You mean to tell me this is the main road from the great river Euphrates that would come down into Damascus, then down into Israel? He said, yes. My father-in-law turned to the bus. He said, you guys understand what he's saying here. This is the road that will be traveled when they come across the great river Euphrates to come down into Israel to invade at the Battle of Armageddon. We see sitting there telling us about these tanks these semis that would come across and bring tanks and things down through here. Right across here, 40 miles, is Damascus. Isaiah chapter 17, verse 1 and 2 talks about Damascus will become a ruinous heap. It appears that will happen when they come down through there and there's war, and that it will happen at the Battle of Armageddon. Anyway, they're coming down through here, and right down below us down through here is Megiddo. We'll be there in the morning, and that's when I'll tell you the story about the Battle of Armageddon, the invasion, and everything. It's awesome because we'll be standing up on Megiddo. However, I want you to understand kind of where we're at here. We're up on the Golan Heights. There's the UN overlook. There's the Damascus, 40 miles. This is where most of it will happen. And of course, Israel, when Israel engages the world governing armies, the Bible says it will originate right there in the plain of Megiddo that we saw off of Mount Carmel there. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, United Nations, number 2. World government. Some of you guys, I know there's several people here that don't follow us. You came, you were just invited, and you came. Thank you very much. But I want you to understand the United Nations. You say, why are they here? They say peacekeeping forces. That is one thing, but they want to have places like this all over the world where they can keep a watch on things. You understand, Rome was a world governing body back when Jesus was here on earth. Why were there Roman soldiers at Jesus' crucifixion? Why was he taken before a Roman judge? Because they had occupying forces all over the world, making sure that the people of the world bowed down to the edicts of Rome. They were the world governing body. Well, why does the United Nations have people here and all around the world, these peacekeeping forces? I've seen UN vehicles in the United States. And so why do they have that? Because the United Nations was established to be a world governing body. The Bible talks about Revelation 13, 1 through 3, that there's going to be nations that federalize together And it talks about the healing of the deadly wound. We talked about that. The Berlin Wall coming down. That the healing of the deadly wound would be the catalyst that would launch us into the New World Order. My father-in-law wrote the book. The two Germanys would reunite when the Berlin Wall came down, and that would point us towards the world government. That's exactly what happened. The United Nations was established to be a world governing body. What happened is at the end of World War II, FDR was a dying man. Let me back up a little bit more and give you a little more history here. The whole goal for decades now has been a world governing body for the elite of the world. And they knew they needed big enough crises to make that happen. So after World War I, what was the answer? The League of Nations. It was the first effort towards a world governing body. However, because Woodrow Wilson couldn't get his Congress to come into that, because back then they read the fine print of those things. And today I highly question that, but back then they realized they were going to have to yield up so much of the United States sovereignty to this world governing body, this League of Nations, that Woodrow Wilson couldn't bring the Congress into that. They would not sign on to it. So the League of Nations failed, because without the United Nations, no world government. Or I'm sorry, without the United States, no world government. So they knew they needed to have a bigger crisis, and that they had to have something to get the United States on board with it, because the goal was a world government. Well, 20 years later, after World War I, World War II hits, but the United States was still dragging our feet in getting into this world governing body, or getting involved in the war, I should say. And so they had to have something happen to get us involved in the war. Well, guess what was the event that happened that got us involved in World War II? Pearl Harbor. Once Pearl Harbor happened, now the United States is all in. We fought the European campaign, we fought the Pacific campaign against the Japanese, and we were victorious in both efforts. However, on the heels of that, Franklin D. Roosevelt was a dying man, and he believed in a world government. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is the one that put Novus Ordo Seclorum, or New World Order, on our dollar bill back in 1935. It's in the little ribbon under the pyramid with the all-seeing eye. Novus Ordo Seclorum means New World Order. So he believed in a world government. Well, at the end of World War II, he was one of the guys. He was a globalist. He believed in a world government, even though he was the president of the United States. And at the end of World War II, he was a dying man. So he had a guy attached to his hip that was going to meetings for him and then coming back and reporting for him and doing a lot of different things. And at the end of World War II, this guy presided over the carving up of Eastern Europe, and that's why Russia got a lot of stuff. I'll tell you why in a minute. Well, at the end of World War II, they commissioned him, and this was Churchill, Stalin, and FDR, commissioned him to write the charter for the United Nations, the next effort towards a world government. And the concentration camps were liberated in Europe in 1945. The bombs were dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. And that year, the United Nations charter was signed. This man was the architect of the United Nations Charter. He was the first acting Secretary General of the United Nations. His name was Alger Hiss. The problem is that 3 years later, he was convicted of perjury for lying about being a communist spy. So the guy that wrote the charter for the United Nations was a communist spy. The United Nations Charter was written, the United Nations was created to be a communistic one world governing body, and not one word of that charter has ever changed from then till now. Why is the United Nations so socialistic today? Because that's what they were created to be, a socialistic, communistic, one world governing body. And whenever I see that UN or United Nations, or see the UN flag, in your mind, you think, hey, this is just this great humanitarian organization that goes in and feeds people after a tsunami or something like that. That's not what they were created to be. They were created to be a communistic, one world governing body. And the Bible tells us that the Antichrist world government, his kingdom in the end time, will be a socialistic or a communistic one world governing body. There will come a time, the United Nations is the seat of that world government in the earth today, and there will come a time when the Antichrist will usurp authority over a fully functioning world government and use that. That will be his kingdom in the end time. It's already socialistic. Antonio Guterres, the current Secretary General of the United Nations, I've got articles over the last year where he's complaining, he's mad because the United Nations doesn't have the teeth, the enforcement methods that he wants them to have. Now they suggest. They meet at the UN General Assembly and they say, Russia's doing this to Ukraine, we think they ought to do this, but nothing ever happens. Russia does what they want. And because Russia has a UN Security Council veto power, any resolution they would pass, Russia just knows, I can veto it, I'll do whatever I want to do. Well, there are a lot of people that are trying to abolish that veto power right now so they can have a true, fully functioning world governing body. That's what the Bible prophesies in Revelation 13, 1 through 2. And when I come up to this UN overlook, a lot of people just think, oh, they're here just as this peacekeeping mission. They say they're here for that, but there will come a time when all of these spots around the world, it's like the Roman government had occupying forces. These guys have supposed peacekeeping forces, but the Antichrist will come in on a platform of peace and flattering. Hey, we've got peace forces all around the world. The problem is those will turn into a military at some point, and look at where they're located. This is just, there's thousands of them all over the world, and so that's what I wanted to show you. They're right here, and the Battle of Armageddon, the Great River Euphrates is going to be dried up to make way for the kings of the east. Damascus is straight up that way. You got peacekeeping. They've already got boots on the ground here, and it's all positioned. The plain of Megiddo's down this way, on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and they'll come right down through here, headed right down to engage Israel at the plain of Megiddo. We'll talk about it tomorrow morning. And so I wanted to give you an idea of what's really going on here. Now, like Ron said, in 67